Hello, yes, hi, and welcome to the Dark Knight Conspiracies, episode 60. Fraud eviscerates everything. What does truth do? What a weekend recap we're going to have here. And I'm just going to spend a short time on the events of this week and yesterday. And we all know what happened in AZ, as I would term absolute zero. But a lot of information was disclosed, and you can go look it up. As always, I'll leave links to everything. Let's go to the Gateway Pundit. You can see all kinds of articles about what happened yesterday. Fraud was proven, deletions, and let's just premise with there was supposedly a leaked preliminary draft, and the fake news media took off running, saying no, nothing was discovered. Actually, Biden had more votes than what was reported. And a lot of people, from what I saw, got, into panic mode and reacted. And again, I'll keep reiterating, use the 48-hour rule, only I'm using 24 hours here. I'm not all excited about what transpired, but some interesting things came out, and I'll just give you my quick take on it. So what is the purpose of an audit? Well, essentially, for those of you in business that go through bank audits or inventory audits, you claim you have, let's just use inventory. You claim you have this amount of dollars in inventory, and the bank comes in and audits you and does a small audit of your inventory. And they'll pick, let's just say, they pick 10 of your top dollar items, and they'll audit them in real time. They'll go count and verify to what your system says and verifies to what you report to. Now, if they find discrepancies, then they expand the audit. Okay, let's cover another 5 parts. And if they see systemic issues, they shut the whole thing down and say, you need to do a full-blown physical inventory, tagged, whatever. So what was the purpose of this audit? Well, the results came out. Well, everything matched up. Cyber Ninjas reported, the system said this amount of ballots were cast, and we counted the paper ballots, and it basically matched up. Okay, and I'll come back to this. But then they go through their reporting, and they find all these irregularities. And Dr. Shiva did an excellent presentation on just the mail-in ballots, and cited, I think, again, I'm off the top of my head, from what I watched, roughly 17,000 double ballots, irregularities, while the margin of victory was only 10,000, right? Okay. Then some other experts got on, and they noted that from the time early voting started till the time the data was provided to the auditors, which was March of 2021, there was a lot of deletion of files, deletion of forensic images of the ballots. And there was more to this. If you didn't watch, again, just go look at these articles. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. But essentially, I think the avenue that they're taking here was not to make this a personal, well, this person got so many votes and this person got so many votes, but, and, you know, this was my only issue with the whole thing. Well, if there were all these questions with double ballots and fraud and this and that, well, what were the tally results? And they're not publishing that. Now, it could be very well that the T-Man did not win Arizona. But I think what they're focusing on is that irregularities happened. And this is where fraud eviscerates everything. It doesn't matter who did the fraud. It could have been one side or the other. They're not making this a Republican witch hunt, so to speak, or a Democrat thing. They're just saying, look, something happened here, and we need to investigate. Well, we know what that means. Oh, we submitted everything to the Attorney General. You know, we know who changed the files. We tied the cameras in the rooms to the time of the deletion of files, and we know who did. Fine and dandy. My point is, I think it's already been established there is no law in this country unless you're on the right side of it. So what's going to happen? Okay, you arrest somebody. Well, chances are they're probably going to get off. This is just kicking the can down the road again. And again, what does an AG investigation mean? Oh, that means we all know how investigations go. Okay, so this is 6 months down the road. They want all 50 states to do this? This is just one state. We're already 6 months into this, and it's not over yet. What does 49 other states look like? You get the picture? This is all a distraction, in my opinion. Everything going on is a distraction. What are they distracting us from? Well, let's go down the road of woo-woo. Now, I gave you a quote in the last episode from Star Trek. And it was, when you eliminate all that is possible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. So, if fraud eviscerates everything, what does truth do? Truth eviscerates fraud. Let that sink in for a minute. Let's think of fraud on a bigger picture. Our history. What if our history has been a total fraud? What if we don't know what our true history is? It's like anything else. This is what we grew up with. This is what we were taught in our schools. And it's no different than religious conversations I used to have with my parents. And, you know, they grew up in, I'm going to give my age away, you know, they grew up in the 40s and 50s and very strict back then. But their answer always was, well, this is what we were taught to believe. Well, my thing and what I've adapted to in my life is having an open mind. It's commendable that you have your foundations and religious beliefs and your moralities, and you stand on those convictions, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're closed-minded, then you're not open to anything. Those are your convictions, those are your beliefs, and you're never going to change your mind, no matter what gets presented to you. But if you have an open mind, you're kind of willing to go back and revisit things. And not necessarily, some people have changed, but some people just merely adapt. Which could be a small thing, like I still believe in my original convictions and beliefs, but I can adapt to certain things. And what an open mind does versus a closed mind, an open mind opens up the doorways to knowledge. And this is what pretty much God wanted us to do, was expand our knowledge, seek knowledge, thirst for knowledge. And whenever you're in a contradiction, you have somebody to go to for clarity. If you're listening. And that's important. So we're going to go down a road here. And I want to cover just a quick religious topic. I know probably a lot of you don't like to hear this, but you know, I grew up Catholic most of my life. I've gotten away from it. I just call myself a Christian. Well, I used to, even as a kid, I used to think, well, these people had the Torah, we had the Bible, Buddhism had their thing, Islam had their thing, China had their thing. Who's right? Somebody has to be right, because all of them are different, but they all have one common goal. They all have one common theme, that there's a greater being. And I'll leave it at that. So where did we get the word religion from? Well, I don't know who created it, but in my opinion, the definition is divisive. It was created to divide the people. Well, how did this happen? Well, again, according to our history, you had the battle between Islam and Christianity back in the day. You had the Templar Knights. Islam was invading Europe. You had the religious wars. And many people died. All over what? A religion, a belief. It's like many people said, religion causes more wars than everything else. Well, what was the purpose? Again, division. What did they distract us from? Ourselves. They wanted us focusing on another power, on relying on somebody else. If we just go back in our Bible and read the New Testament, unless somebody can prove me wrong, Jesus never talked about a religion. He talked about a way of life. His Father gave us commandments to live by, gave us morality. There was never any mention of a religion. It was a way of life, how to treat people. You know, when Jesus told Peter, that you are the rock that I will build my church upon. Most people took that as literal. What he was telling him was that we are the church. It's not a building. If you feel comfortable going to a church, more power to you. Whatever it takes to get you there. The end road is still the same. However many forks in the road there are, they all end up in the same place. So long as it gets you there. But we are the church. You know, there's the story of when he sent the disciples out in pairs. And the stories they came back with. They were amazed how they had the ability. They talked about how they healed people, how they did this and they did that. That is the real message. Jesus didn't give them that power. The message was, we were born with it. We have that power. And just try it sometime. See if it works. I can tell you it's worked for me on several occasions. But I think that's what they're distracting us from, is that this is what they're so afraid of, is us learning that we actually, those of us with a soul and a higher learning, not that I'm saying I have a higher learning, but when you hear scientists say, well, we only use 10% of our brain capacity, well, what the hell does the other 90% do? Think about that. So let's go down back to the future, as I would say. And what got me into this episode was, I don't know if any of you know Jason Q or follow him, and not that I follow him regularly, but boy, he's out there. But this is what an open mind comes. I'm open to listening to this stuff. And you know, in a recent episode, he talked about 2012. Remember the Mayan calendar thing and how everybody thought the world was going to end, just like we thought it was going to end in 2000 with Y2K? But, you know, the Mayan calendar only went to 2012, and everybody thought that was it. They were predicting the end of the world. And then later on down the road, people started to come out and say, no, that's really not what they were saying. They were saying we were just going to enter a new age. Would kind of make sense. And that their calendar didn't go beyond that. But back in the 2000s and before 2012, you heard a lot about CERN. What is CERN? Well, CERN is a quantum super collider, which is in Switzerland, documented. You can go research it. It exists. It's real. And it's fascinating when you go down that rabbit hole about this whole thing. And the purpose of this instrument is, you know, these are Baal worshippers, whatever you want to call them. And what they were trying to do with this was open a portal into hell, basically. Well, if I look at my biblical teachings, God gave power to Satan to rule over Earth. What would they need to open a portal for? He's already here walking around, right? Already has control of it. That's why we have free will. We get to choose which road we want to go down, which side we want to pick. But he had an interesting theory, and this gets back to, I never watched the Matrix movies, but I keep hearing a lot of correlation to this. I guess maybe I'm going to have to spend some time and watch it. But he theorizes that CERN was activated, and that what they did was take basically us and a facsimile of this Earth and transported us into Satan's dimension. A lot of people tell you, you're batshit crazy, dude. Again, open mind. I'm willing to play with this, but when you start going down different rabbit holes, you can find what I call corroborating evidence to kind of support something along the lines, and I equate this to a divorce. There's his side, her side, and in the middle is the truth. So when you take both sides and put the stories together, my assimilation of this is probably 10 to 20% of both sides is the truth. It's the other 80% that's fabricated. So what is the truth? Quite frankly, we don't know. And we may not want to know. But I think it gets back into my growing up with the fascination with UFOs. And the other part of the evidence is, and I'll leave the link to this Art Bell videos, and the one I want you to focus on is this one, David Jacobs, The Hybrids, Part 2. What he talks about is how the aliens, excuse my dog, interrupting the broadcast here. What he talks about here is how there have been abductions and experiments going on for who knows how long. Archaeology shows us stone images of things in the sky. The Bible talks about chariots of fire coming from the sky. Well, you know, they didn't know what they were seeing. That's how they described these things, just like Nostradamus. So what he talks about here, and he believes this totally, that there's been a breeding going on between humans and aliens, and that the goal was to ultimately take over the population. Well, think about what I said about the CERN thing, and you put this together and combine them, and let's just fool around with 10% of that. What are you seeing around you now compared to if you lived back in the 70s or 80s? Have you ever seen such vitriol, lack of respect for your fellow human being, no morality? Is it possible? Is it possible that we have two different populations going on here? And mind you, these people, if this is real, I can't vet it. Don't know. Got a lot of people that have said they've been abducted and, you know, they've been implanted and eggs were stolen. Don't know. But here's where we're going to go down the rabbit hole. Y'all know about lizard people, right? Yeah, that story exists. It goes all the way back to Adam and Eve. This appeared in the New York Times back in 1934. This is an article on the the Los Angeles Times, Los Angeles, about lizard people living underground in LA. And here's the article here's the newspaper article. And I'm not going to go through all this, but just read this and think about it. Now, where does this go from here? Well, this goes back to the Hubert theory. If these things exist, what have they been doing? And again, this is all open source information. This is stuff that's all come out. It's been hidden for a long time. And my theory on all this, where I'm going with all this, is Antarctica is the keystone. And I'll get to that right now. But before I do, I got to put this in a timeline. So let's just go to Operation High Jump. And this is documented. In 1947, Admiral Richard Byrd took 4,000 military troops from U.S., Britain, and Australia as an invasion of Antarctica. Nobody was living there. Invasion of what? Well, if you do some research, supposedly Germany in the 30s, under you-know-who, got there and discovered something. What did they discover? Whatever it was, it must have been important that a whole military brigade went down there, and this is all vetted. This is fact. And then you got the Battle of Antarctica, and Admiral Byrd came back with his tail between his legs. Whatever happened down there, they got destroyed. Totally destroyed. They were outmatched. So, why haven't we been overpowered, invaded, taken over? Well, maybe we were. You know, the T-Man used to talk about the invisible enemy. That could mean a lot of things. Some have said these people are they can shapeshift. Remember, in the days of the National Enquirer, 13 of my members of the Senate are aliens. You know, it was considered a rag. You know, and people bought and read these articles, but isn't that a little way of getting out a little bit of the truth? Isn't that Satan's Achilles heel? He has to tell you what he's doing before he can do it. So what's next? Well, his own granddaughter talks about this. Supposedly he met with both sides of the aliens. And I'll just call them the good and the bad. And according to the reports, you read it all for yourself. I don't want to go too much into it, but supposedly a deal was struck with the bads in exchange for, let's just say, experimentation. Take that where you want to. That we were given certain technologies. Have you ever asked yourself why we've never really advanced as far as we should have. I always said, whatever comes out now, they've had for 50 years. When you want to talk about computers coming out, personal computers coming out in, say, the 90s, they had those back in the 50s. You talk about cell phones, they had those in World War II. What do you think? How do you think these guys were communicating on the field? Remember the field packs with the phone and they'd wire it up with the antenna? That's a cell phone. It wasn't connected to any power line. They were doing that in the field. So I guess my point of all this is, whether we like it or not, our future is connected with this. And everything, in my opinion, the focal point is what is in Antarctica. And I'm going to end it with this. Russia's top religious leader performs ancient ritual in Antarctica over Saudi Arabia's mysterious Ark of Gabriel. Now, supposedly, back in 2015, during a routine building project, they uncovered a tunnel and found the Ark of Gabriel. And upon finding this, according to the article, many people died from the power of this thing, because just like if you believe the stories about the Ark of the Covenant, only certain people within the Jewish faith, say the Sanhedrin with the proper robes and attire, I mean, this is mind-blowing stuff, could open that thing and survive. Y'all saw Raiders of the Lost Ark and what happened, right? Was that a little bit of truth? Who knows? But supposedly this religious leader performed some ancient ritual. Well, the question you're going to ask is, well, how did this thing get from Saudi Arabia to Antarctica? Well, they tell you. At some point, Russia was able to get this thing and transport it to there. I don't know. I can't vet this stuff, but it's interesting to play around with. Like I said, I have an open mind. And, you know, over time, you can go look. A lot of well-known dignitaries have visited Antarctica. John Kerry, Obama's been reported, Bush. Supposedly the Pope, can't vet that one, can't find out. What is so interesting there? That's all I'm saying, folks. So that's my woo-woo for the week. And I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of comments and lose a lot of followers, but I think my point of all this is we don't know our real history. And the 17 board has told us only 40% would eventually get disclosed to us, because the other 60% we wouldn't be able to handle mentally. Think about that. If it's true. That's why I call this the conspiracy show. I'm not saying this is fact or fiction. This is my opinion. This is my open mind. You make your own conclusions, and you can call me whatever you want. But things are definitely heating up around us. again, I think everything is distracting us from what the real truth is. As the T-Man and the 17 board have said, this is going to be biblical. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And we're operating on God's timeline, nobody else's. So with that, I'll say, as always, stay safe, stay strong, stay vigilant, be prepared, and God bless everybody. Until next time, Zebra 3, take us home.